All right, I'm at JFK right now. I landed in Vegas, and I'm gonna go meet a family member for the first time.
How on earth could you be so related to somebody, have such a similar belief system, and not meet for over 30 years? There's the Sphere. The Sphere looks so cool. Has anybody been to the Sphere? Let me know in the comments. This looks amazing. I've got to check this out at some point. Okay, I've arrived. I am so excited and strangely nervous for this conversation. Yo.
Hey.
Nice meeting you, brother.
You too. Thanks for reaching out.
Not actual literal brother. Okay, this is bananas, but we are technically family.
Yes, actually pretty closely related.
We're cousins.
Yeah.
And this is literally the first time we've ever sat down together.
Yep. First, I heard your voice for the first time, what, a week ago?
That's so wild.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for YouTube. The Cultured Crew connected me. My audience was telling me about you. But we have so much to unpack. Like, this is already confusing for people watching, but it's just so crazy to me that you and I grew up and spent time literally in the same physical geographical area. Mm-hmm. You're a Zitting.
Yes.
My mother is a Zitting.
Wild, yeah.
We're in the same family, and we went over 3 decades and not meeting until now.
I mean, had you ever heard of me even?
No.
See, it goes even beyond that.
And the question is, how is that possible?
Yeah.
That's what we need to talk about today and unpack this. This is so fascinating to me. If this is your first time seeing me, I have 44 siblings. How many siblings do you have?
35.
35 siblings. Both of us grew up in branches of Mormonism, fundamentalist Mormonism, but different branches, different connections of Mormonism, which we'll get into. I escaped more recently, just a few years ago, and we're going to get into all of that.
Yeah.
I started my whole life over in New York. You're here in Vegas. Okay, we need to talk about how this is possible, the split. And I don't even know, like, literally, this is our first time literally sitting down.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I met you for the first time a few minutes ago, and we're still in shock here. So
This is so cool. Okay, the split. How did this happen? So let's not just forget the camera. I'm so curious to hear how you think of the split. So just for context, we're connected to Mormonism as a whole. And what a lot of people don't realize is that Mormonism and fundamentalist Mormonism are actually very closely interlinked. They like to separate them, and I'm curious if you think differently on this. But we come from the same history. Do you disagree with that?
no, not at all.
Okay, so how does fundamentalism come into play? Obviously, if you're a fundamentalist Mormon, you believe in the principle of plural marriage or
Correct.
polygamy.
Uh-huh.
And it was a tenet of the Mormon church
For a long time.
for a very long time.
Yes.
Joseph Smith was a polygamist. Brigham Young was a polygamist.
John
Taylor. And
Yeah.
that's where we come, right? John
Yeah,
Taylor.
John Taylor was the last that I was raised believing in. John Taylor was the last. Yes.
Yes. And that's where this story sort of begins. Mm-hmm. Because there's this guy, John Taylor, who was the third, right? The third apostle, prophet of the Mormon church, and sort of the last polygamist. And during the time, and feel free to put any holes that I'm talking about now with the Mormon history, but what ended up happening is Utah was not yet a state. Mm-hmm. And it was trying to become part of the United States. It was called the area, the Deseret or something, the area of Deseret. And the area of Deseret, which is now Utah, kept running into problems with the federal government because of things like polygamy.
Well, they were doing illegal things as a church, and because of that, they weren't allowed to become a state. And basically, and beyond that, the government was telling the church that if you don't stop doing these things, we will take away certain rights and certain things from you as a church.
Mm-hmm. So this is so fascinating. Just imagining that time period, because it's so hard to wrap your head around this or communicate this and why it's such a big deal. The Mormon church at that point, like Joseph Smith, had made it such a big deal that not only is polygamy acceptable, it's required to not get to just, you guys have the three heavens too?
Yes.
Telestial,
Yep.
terrestrial,
And
celestial.
Yep.
And polygamy is known as the celestial law.
Celestial law, yes.
And you have to live polygamy to get into the highest heaven.
Correct. Or at least at least the way I was raised,
Yeah.
you at least have to accept the law. Now, so it's
Okay.
interesting because we hear from people all the time that say we were required to at least have 3 wives in order to get to the celestial kingdom, or the highest degree, because there's degrees of glory within the celestial kingdom as well. So it gets more complicated. But regardless, in order to live with God and become as He is, we have to have 3 wives. So I wasn't raised to believe that, but I do hear from other people saying that type of thing.
Okay. Either way, polygamy is a big deal.
Yes.
And it's talked about as not just and you just barely said you have to accept it, because what happens if you don't?
If you don't accept the law, then you have no chance of living in the celestial kingdom.
That is such a big deal. Dude, there's so much to unpack. The world has nothing knows. So, Mormonism is seriously one of the most interesting case studies of humanity to me, and we happen to be born into it. But I'll digress on it. But it's just fascinating. So, just setting up the context, Mormonism, the prophet says, not only is polygamy permitted, it is a law of God. You must accept it. For many, they were taught that you must live it to even have a chance to get to the celestial kingdom. Joseph Smith himself said that when he had the law presented, the narrative that he told his wife Emma and many of his followers was, an angel came with a drawn sword.
Yeah.
And said, this is so funny, by the way, to me. Now I'm like, not really in it. It's like, you must do this, because guys have so many stories to cover up their extramarital affairs.
There's a lot of theories out there about why he would have come with that story. Some of them say such that he was already caught in the act. 100%. Was caught in the act, and then, of course, had to come up with something very quickly.
Of course.
But then there's a whole other community out there that claim that Joseph Smith never believed in or ever practiced polygamy himself at all.
I was just talking about this on my last episode because I found this community. There's like this, and it's got to be wild for you, right?
Yep.
Because when I found this, that there's this community arguing if polygamy is even a thing.
Yep. About Joseph Smith.
Joseph Smith. I don't know if you felt this, but I was like, it's wild because we have a front row seat to all of the stories, and we wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
Literally, you and I would not exist without those stories.
Yep.
And so it's actually so funny to me to sit and watch people argue on Reddit about whether it was ever truly a thing, because my existence sits on the fact that it is real. Like, people believed it so much. And then we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but that's wild that you just mentioned that, because I had just found that community and I mentioned it on my last episode.
Right. The idea that, at least based on the way we were raised, which we'll get into that as well, but the idea that Joseph Smith never practiced polygamy is so wild, because it was the amount of stories that we were taught with growing up, that Joseph Smith, we laid out his life. This is what he believed. Polygamy was such a big, important thing.
We did plays on it.
Yep.
Like you probably have the 1886 episode.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So to continue down the path. So polygamy said, this is how you get to the celestial kingdom. Brigham Young takes it on. The whole church is taking it on. And then the federal government is like, no. There's like laws that are passed. There's court cases.
Yep.
Church property being confiscated. So then there's this moment in the late 1880s, right? Where the LDS Church says, guess what, guys? No longer need to live polygamy. God's no longer requiring it.
The Manifesto. Yep. I'm curious for you, because around our dinner table, we would often joke and laugh about the Manifesto and say things like, because the Manifesto starts off, the one that Wilford Woodruff signed, starts off with saying, "To whom it may concern," right? And I remember the
Doesn't
adults,
concern us, right?
Yeah, well, and the adults would say, "What a stupid way." I mean, they're claiming this is coming from God, and they started off by saying, "To whom it may concern." Like, what kind of revelation is that, right? So it's very interesting, and we were very much against the manifesto.
100%. So let's unpack this piece just a little bit. We could do a whole episode on just the manifesto. But why is this a big deal for fundamentalists? Because at the time, it was very much believed within LDS circles that the manifesto was just a political move to appease the federal government.
Yep.
So that we could say, yo, we're not officially living polygamy. Look, we have this thing called who it may concern. And you're absolutely right. Not only over our dinner table, over our church pulpits, we were always saying, like, does it say, and they would actually compare it to other relations or other revelations that say, thou shalt. And some of our church leaders would get animated like, this says thou shalt. This says who it may concern. Do you think that's a revelation?
Yeah, exactly.
And so I don't think people realize how much people believed in this, that they had to live this way in order to get to heaven.
Right. Well, and Wilford Woodruff himself, the one to whom it may concern, the one that signed the manifesto saying that we will no longer practice polygamy, he continued to practice polygamy, and leadership within the church continued to marry people in this plural marriage.
Yes.
And so it didn't stop. Like you said, it was just to appease the government.
100%. Like the physical reality of humans within the LDS church said, well, obviously we don't believe what we just wrote. We just did that so we could get our church or our property back, so that we don't have to be in trouble with the federal government, so we can have statehood. Our own leaders are continuing to live it.
Right.
Then something changes. So I'm actually curious how you fill some holes in here if you see a different angle. But my understanding of it is the federal government gets word essentially through however the grapevine was back then that the LDS church hasn't actually stopped living polygamy.
Right.
And so there's like enacting more laws. I think they may even like threaten to take more property or something like that. And so the LDS church is under intense pressure to actually dispense with any marriages, any polygamous marriages happening. And this is where this fork happens.
Exactly.
There's a lot of details around this fork. I'm not going to get into it, but here's the main fork from the LDS Church and the Fundamentalist movement. And I'm a little bit passionate about this one topic because it really because there's so many people, and it's not their fault. There are so many LDS members that have not been told any history that we just talked about, that they think that us, the fundamentalist movement, and I say I'm not even part of it now. Like I'm not even part of the church, but they don't know how intertwined the fundamentalist movement is with their church. They're always saying we're separate, but literally they were the same thing, believed the same thing, and then the fork happened. When did the fork happen? When the LDS church said, you know what, we are actually going to stop living polygamy. You can still accept the law. Maybe we're going to live it in the future. Other narratives popped up like that came way later that it was never a requirement or it was just for a time. There's so many narratives now that the LDS church has.
They had to come up with some reason for the change, right? And make it seem okay. Because before the split and before they officially put the kibosh on polygamy, it was taught that it is a must.
It was 100%. One of the biggest eye rolls for me of the narratives that have come out is like, there was just a shortage of men.
Right.
That's the biggest eye roll one because we know how much it was preached. Like, again, drawn sword. You're going to die if you don't accept it. You have to live it. And it was like, no, it was just a thing. It was just a test for a while. Right. No, it was taught like you must. It was like a must. So this is what gets kind of fucked up to me. The LDS church begins excommunicating Actually, it started with a mass excommunication of members that refused
to stop practicing polygamy. Yes.
Think about that, though. Think about that. You're kicking your members out. The ones that are continuing, again, I don't even have a dog in the fight at this point. I don't believe in polygamy. I mean, people can do whatever they want, whatever adults want to do. But the thing that is wild to me is the leadership of the church excommunicated members for merely being faithful to the doctrine that their leaders told them for generations that they must live, must accept to get to the celestial kingdom. Talk about, I'm going to say this word, I've never said this at this point. Talk about a sense of betrayal that our ancestors must have felt.
Yeah, and that's kind of where the Council of Men started. You know,
What's the Council of Men?
So these are the.
You mean the Council of Friends?
Sorry, that is yes, but they were all men. But they were the.
Yes. There's like a specific name, like
Council of Friends. You're correct. Yes, that is the correct term. But that's where that started. They coming together and saying, "Hold on a minute, the betrayal you talk about. You know, we have been taught and we believe this certain way of life, and it's required to be." To live in the celestial kingdom after this life. So they weren't willing to reject what they had been taught their whole lives. And my grandfather was a part of that council.
Charles Zitting. My great-grandfather. Yeah. That's the thing that's so bananas to me. Charles Zitting, was he a big figure in your upbringing?
Oh, yes, big time.
This is bananas to me because he was such a big figure in mine. I'm getting goosebumps right now. I have his books. That's what blows my brain. We haven't even gotten to the crazy part about the split and why we've never met, which we'll get to. But it just blows my mind that he was a big figure in your history. He was a major figure in mine. And yet, family lines were divided over doctrine, which we'll get into. But just to catch up, LDS Church kicks out these members for practicing. It creates this whole sort of movement, the fundamentalist Mormon movement. And it's really these people that believe to their core that they're doing the right thing, that they're continuing the original teachings of the prophet Joseph Smith, of Brigham Young, of every leader, and that the LDS Church is sort of just falling astray, becoming one with the world.
Exactly. They're willing to change. And we were always taught that God doesn't change.
Right.
His laws don't change. And yet here we see this church changing. And that's something that we were off. And I'm curious what you were taught about the mainstream LDS church. But for me, we were taught to believe that it was like unto the great and spacious building or the great and abominable church talked about in the Book of Mormon. So, and just to point out that the way I was raised, looking at the mainstream LDS church, we looked at them as these worldly people, which is almost funny because they always take pride in not being worldly.
Right.
But compared to the way we were raised, very worldly.
Very worldly. The way we talked about it, we did not like the church, the LDS church. I was raised that they not just betrayed their own people, but they were betraying themselves. They were betraying God. We were going to get the temples back eventually. They were really our temples. Did you ever get that one?
Not really. We were just taught that we would at some point start building temples, which
happened. Right.
Yes.
Yeah, we were taught that the LDS church, or the main temple in the Salt Lake Valley, belonged to the fundamentalists, and they were eventually, when the One Mighty and Strong came back, which is again a whole other conversation we won't get into too much, but the One Mighty and Strong, somebody that's going to come and set everything in order, and we're going to get our property back, which feels strangely like Israel-Palestine to me. Like this is really our land, and we're going to get it back. But there was something we just said. I want to come back. The way we sort of the attitude that people had. I actually want to backtrack a tad, or walk back a little bit. Several people had very fond memories of their time in the LDS church. And the way they talked about it often was mother the church, father the priesthood, mother the church. Now, the priesthood is a conversation we need to have, and why it's such a big conversation in the split of the movement from the regular church to fundamentalism, and why it's going to be the key thing as to why you and I haven't met till today.
Yep.
But the language was around the LDS church is sort of like milk toast and honey, and we're the meat. And what that was meant is like they have some of the goodness, but they don't have the fullness.
Correct. Right.
We have the fullness because we have the united order, we have the celestial marriage bit.
The fundamentals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so this was like the true core thing. So you could easily be a LDS member and eventually come into fundamentalist Mormonism, which happened a lot in the early times.
Yes.
Like, didn't that happen with your grandfather, my great-grandfather, Charles Zitting? Taking like women from the LDS church.
And converting them to what became the FLDS church.
Right.
Yes, definitely. And in fact, my father's first wife was raised in the mainstream LDS church and converted to the FLDS church later on, and then married my father.
Yeah.
So that was happening earlier on. There was a lot more connection between the two churches, and as time went on, of course, they split further and further apart.
I'm curious your understanding around why priesthood became such a central conversation around the breakoff of the LDS church, which then ended up forming the fundamentalist Mormon church.
Right. Well, priesthood, geez, I mean, it's everything as far as who has the authority, because priesthood is...
What is priesthood? Let's define it.
There we go. Priesthood is literally the power of God given to man on earth to act in his name and to do the important ordinances and covenants and things on this earth. So without that direct line of Joseph Smith given the priesthood by angels, without or by apostles of Jesus Christ, without that direct line, if you start breaking off from that direct line, you no longer have the actual priesthood and the actual power from God.
Right.
You're over there doing your own thing that has nothing to do with God anymore. So you have to keep the direct line. And of course, I was taught to believe that that's what we did.
100%. In fact, the regular world has the whole, what came first, the chicken or the egg? In Mormonism, the question is, what came first, priesthood or the church? Right?
That's a good point, yeah.
And the big question at this time, during this contentious late 1800s, early 1900s, was... people would say, this is the church. We have the church. The LDS church is the church. But the contention that the fundamentalists took on was, yeah, but we have
the priesthood.
Priesthood.
The actual power. Yeah, the keys of the priesthood. There we are. Meaning that you actually have the authority to do baptisms, to perform marriages, to the celestial law, right? All of those things that we were taught was the most important thing. Right. I mean, the mainstream LDS church I was taught was over there. Sure, they're doing some good things. They have some leaders that are very respected and great people, but they don't have the keys. They don't have the priesthood, the authority to do what they're doing. Therefore, it's all going to waste. And eventually, we're going to have to go in there and do these baptisms and do all of these things so that they actually are done properly.
And in a way, I think, at least the way I was raised, we started to think that they were becoming more and more just like a traditional Christian church.
Oh, yes.
Like there's a lot of good Christian churches out there that are doing good things. But the reason Mormonism came to be in the first place is because it was to restore the original church that's the one true church that has the authority. And you need that authority in order to get the true blessings, what God promises.
Right.
So priesthood is like so important in Mormon lore, especially fundamentalist Mormon lore, because it shows we have the continued power and promise to do what we've been sort of almost even a duty to do. Like a lot of our ancestors, I think, felt that way. I think they felt it as we have to do this. Like our church is falling away. This is our duty to carry this on.
Right. Well, yes. I mean, and back when the split happened, I mean, that was so...
Which one?
The original, when...
The one with the LDS church?
After the Manifesto.
Okay.
When the fundamentalists, my grandfather, your great-grandfather, and the group of friends, or the council of friends, that all was so fresh to the beginnings of the church. I mean, now it's almost frustrating to talk about, but think of what it was like for them back in those days when, I mean, it wasn't that long ago when Brigham Young was talking about the importance of all of these things and the persecution that was happening to the church as they were trying to hold on to this belief of polygamy and the original teachings of Joseph Smith and the church. Yeah. So, yeah, it was a very... I can't imagine how difficult it would have been for our ancestors to have to see the church go a different direction.
Yeah, every single one of them knew Brigham Young, and almost, I think several of them also probably knew Joseph Smith too.
Probably.
Yeah. Okay. I just have to zoom out. This is so wild how you know this. Like, because it feels like I mean, it kind of makes sense because we come from the same history, but It's just fun as like a conversation that we're both talking about this and coming to similar understandings of the history of where we come from, even though we've never literally had this conversation before.
Right. Well, and because where we came from, we continued on the same path.
For a long time.
I mean, it was pretty recent that our two churches went different directions.
And that's what I called... Did you guys call it the split when we...
Yes.
Okay. Let's go to the split and why. This to me is the most sad part of what I think has become of fundamentalist Mormonism and really any sort of super... too tightly held dogmatic belief systems.
Yeah.
Because what became a big deal in this whole transition from the LDS Church to the FLDS was this thing of priesthood. And what that came to be is this huge, I mean, humans always disintegrate into this of like, it's a power struggle. And who gets to have the power, who gets to have the authority. Now, this is actually going to be an interesting conversation because we're coming at it from different sides of it.
I'm sure we heard different stories.
Yeah, so I'm going to be curious to hear your side because our side was, well, let's first look at the things that we probably heard the exact same story. 1886 episode, we both heard that, right? Mm-hmm. The 1886 episode, I talked about it a little bit on the previous episode where there's this revelation that fundamentalist Mormons believe that Joseph Smith and Jesus came to John Taylor, and essentially, which John Taylor is the church apostle at the time, that says you must continue to live this way. You must set people apart. It's what sort of kicks off the fundamentalist movement.
Yep.
So you have that. We have this new formation that, again, your Charles Zitting is now a part of that and stuff like that. And then there's this... It's kind of strange. It's sort of like the same thing happens, but in a different way, where a difference in understanding of doctrine, except it's not becoming from like outside pressure necessarily. It's just with the inside pressure. So the question is, who actually is in charge? Who has the authority, right?
Yep.
And it's like, does the one person in charge have it? Mm-hmm. Or does the council have it? Like the one man, which at the time, Leroy Johnson.
Leroy Johnson, yep. Which I always believed as a prophet. And
totally.
He did everything right. I'm curious where it ended up for you. But
with him?
With Leroy Johnson, yes. This
is fascinating. My entire upbringing, he was revered.
Oh, okay.
Even though he was on the other side of the split, we were taught that because he was so loved.
Yeah.
Actually, let's actually have a conversation about Leroy Johnson. I'm curious, how was he viewed in your upbringing? Like, how was he talked about?
So, well, he was obviously the prophet before Rulin' Jeffs. So before the Jeffs took over, Leroy Johnson was the prophet of the FLDS Church.
And just to connect people to this conversation, Rulon Jeffs is Warren Jeffs' father.
Correct.
And keep sweet, pray and obey, the whole thing. I mean, that's all about Warren Jeffs and like this whole thing. But just to take that a couple of steps back, Warren Jeffs, Rulon Jeffs, Leroy Johnson.
Leroy Johnson.
So Leroy Johnson.
Leroy Johnson, my father would often talk about Leroy Johnson. I think it seemed as though that his favorite prophet of all times was Leroy Johnson. He was very well respected. There were all of these stories, I'm curious if you heard them too, of Leroy Johnson going out and performing these miracles. I mean, he was like a very powerful, he was a smaller man, but he had a lot of power and very loved, very kind. And there were lots of stories even though I never met Leroy Johnson because he passed away before I was born. But I mean, just as an example, my father would always tie his shoes with the right foot first and then the left foot. And,
Leroy Johnson would?
Well, my father would, and then we would ask, in talking with my father, he would say the reason he does it is because Leroy Johnson did it. And when he was asked why he did it, he said, because there is order in all things. So there were all of these stories about Leroy Johnson and how just influential, loved, and powerful he was as a prophet.
And isn't Leroy Johnson where that entire phrase comes from, which we had as well, by the way? Keep sweet.
See, I thought that came from Rulon Jeffs, but I guess if you had it, it must have come from him.
I think it was started by Leroy Johnson. It must have. So this is interesting. We're learning something. So yeah, it must have, because strangely, this is another tidbit. My father and grandfather, my grandfather ended up being one of the church leaders in our side of the split. A lot of respect for your Rulon Jeffs as well.
Interesting.
Because the way, and it makes sense because it was taught that it was so dangerous to criticize legitimate authority. It is the first, criticizing legitimate authority is the first step to apostasy. It was a line we'd always say.
That's 100% what we would hear too. And that would scare us into ever questioning, which kind of goes hand in hand with shut up and keep sweet, except for they would say it a lot nicer than that. Just keep sweet, pray and obey, keep sweet, no matter what was the term.
That's what I was going to say. I'm seeing foreshadowing of cultiness just even early on, of like the phrase that you said, there's order in all things. That to me is such a beginning foreshadowing of where this whole movement ends up heading and is still going on to this very day, where, there's order in all things. So this is the right order. Keep sweet, and keep sweet to me, ultimately it ends up being like, be led as though by a hair. Did you guys have that phrase?
Oh, yes.
What does be led as though by a hair mean?
Basically, be so willing to do what you're asked and go where you're told to go and do what you're told to do, that someone could literally lead you by a hair without breaking it. That's how willing you are to follow.
It sounds so sweet and so euphoric and or so utopian and like, but why wouldn't you want to do exactly what God wants for you?
That's the key. It's not the prophet. It's not the leader. It's God, right? And so in our minds, I always assumed everything Warren Jeffs, because Warren Jeffs was the bulk of my growing up as the prophet, at least when I got older. And I assumed everything he said out of his mouth, because he was told to us that he was the mouthpiece of God, that everything he said was God's words coming through him. So we were terrified to question him or to disapprove with anything he said.
Yeah, it's just it's so fascinating to me. You start to see how this happened. Not like so many people on the outside probably think, how the frick did a cult start like this? And I think a lot of people mistakenly think that Warren Jeffs created this thing.
No.
And
I mean, he did a lot of awful things, but
he
didn't start it.
Yeah, he basically took advantage of literally generations of conditioning, human conditioning. Keep sweet, be led as though by a hair. You're seeing that you're seeing your dad behave a certain way towards the prophet, that he can do no wrong. That same thing starts to be adopted by the next guy. Leroy Johnson was such a sweet guy. What happens when he dies? That same, like, people then sort of put that on.
You want to know? Yeah. Sorry, you said Leroy Johnson's such a sweet guy, and I just wanted to go back to our conversation about him. I heard from the first time someone that's a little bit older than I am, that grew up in the FLDS church as well, that said, "Oh no, Leroy Johnson wasn't always this sweet guy. Like he has things he did as well that hurt others and that were not okay."
Really?
Which I had never heard that before. It was only one time I heard that.
Not a surprise, because this is one thing. Like, this is a hard thing to say to a fundamentalist kid, especially if you're showing it. But these prophets are dudes.
Yeah,
they're human people.
They're not perfect.
They're not perfect. And we literally were taught, and like, it's sort of really hard for me when I hear family members talk about how much, like, my grandfather has been put on such a pedestal, and he's done a lot of good things, but he's also done, like, now that I've been out and I'm like, have my own sense of morality, like, he would put like 2 boys that were younger than me like in the laundry room for a week as punishment. Like, what the fuck? Like, he was racist. Like, that's a whole thing. Like,
that's a whole other video. But I think all of at least the people I was surrounded with were racist in some way or another, for sure.
100%. So let's see if we can try to tie this back to, like, the Leroy Johnson conversation to the split off. But I didn't hear any stories particularly about him performing miracles, just that he was like one of the best people to walk on the face of the earth.
Very humble. That's the key word that I would always hear.
My dad would always read his sermons and stuff like that. Like, he was this major figure. And there's this scapegoat that happens in the split between the FLDS church, as it's called, and the work. By the way, here's another fun tidbit. Didn't you guys call yourselves that? The work? Like, didn't the LDS church or the FLDS have some people call that growing up, or no?
I never heard of that.
Okay.
It's called the work.
I was listening to some old sermons, and I thought...
No, it's very likely. It's very likely that it was called that. Zion was a big word used in the FLDS church.
Of course.
The work, I can see that. I mean, it was the work of God, but it could have been abbreviated or shortened to just the work. I can see that. I didn't call it that, but it's likely other people did.
Okay, so let's see if we can tie in how the split happens with us. So there is this conflict within the leadership. Now, on our side of the story, really, the congregation is what ended up being scapegoated, because you can't criticize the leadership for having disputes with each other. Right. So you have to scapegoat something. And what ends up being scapegoated is all y'all, the entire congregation. Yep. So the fundamental conflict is, who has the authority? Is it the one man, the prophet, Leroy Johnson, or is it the council?
Right.
And on your side, it ends up being accepted that the prophet's the prophet.
Ultimately, he has the ultimate say, yes.
He has the ultimate say. On my side, where I come from, it was believed, no, we're all sharing this authority. Now, there is order in all things, so you will have seniority, not based on age, not based on anything else, but based on when you were ordained. So that was the narrative that formed. And I found it blew my mind later that wasn't, my understanding with your side is that wasn't, like, the order of ordination wasn't that big of a conversation in your upbringing.
Nope.
It was everything in my upbringing.
Well, and it's everything in the mainstream LDS church as well.
Okay.
The order of which they are called into apostleship is ultimately how the next prophet is chosen.
Okay. So what ends up happening is there's this rift between the council, between Leroy Johnson and these other men. Now, some of the other characters at this time are, I was almost going to say your father, but not your father, but Leroy, Roland Jeffs, Guy Musser, who is one of my mom's father, actually, recently passed. Like not this time period, but right before the split.
Okay, that makes more sense. Okay.
And so did Jonathan Marion Hammond was helped part of the split.
Yes, he was a part of it.
So Jonathan Marion Hammond, and then a big key figure, Alma Timpson.
Yeah.
So Leroy Johnson ultimately sort of flexes his prophet power and says, it is the one man. I'm the guy that has it. In fact, I don't know if he didn't say these words or I don't even know if he had this energy of like, I'm going to prove it to you. But one way or another, he kicks out these other men.
Right. He says, if you're not going to listen and follow what I say, then did he kick him out, or did they just ultimately say, we're not going to continue following, therefore we're gone?
You don't know about this?
Well, I've heard a couple different stories. And I was also going to ask you, did they consider Leroy Johnson as a prophet or just as another one of the council at that time? Do you know?
That word, this is what's interesting. We did not grow up using the word the prophet much.
Okay.
That was reserved for one dude, Joseph Smith.
Oh, really?
Right.
So the prophet didn't continue. See, that's something
he was called the president. Mm-hmm. The president of priesthood.
Gotcha. So technically he did have seniority over the other guys.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. So at least they looked at him as the so-called leader.
This is actually kind of funny that we're sitting at a round table. This wasn't on purpose, but the analogy that we were taught is like they have the priesthood leaders are like holding a round table. There's somebody that might be at the head that directs which direction the table moves or whatever, but it's round. Like there's no hierarchy.
Okay.
But there is order in all things. And so as soon as Leroy Johnson dies, it goes directly to whoever's next in line, whether it was Rulon Jeffs or I don't know if that was him or if it was going to be Alma Timpson or Jonathan J.M. Hammond. But so this is interesting. There's actually a day the split starts. And I've been given, and I'm probably going to, if you guys want to know more about what I'm about to say and you want to hear more of this, let me know. But I have this whole library of all of the recordings.
Of how it happened?
I have like almost every recording from like your side of the church.
Interesting.
Categorized, ordered names, my father, Charles Zitting, Warren Jeffs, like so many sermons. Like somebody categorized it and gifted it to me on Google Drive.
Wow.
And there is a church meeting, and this is actually talked about a lot in my side of the split, where Leroy Johnson kicks off these primary two men, J.M. Hammond and Alma Timpson. Mm-hmm. And you can actually go listen to it. Now, the story that we were told, which is a little bit embellished, because after I listened to it, I was like, that's a little bit less dramatic than we were taught. But we were taught that the people of the church, of the LDS church, or of the FLDS, which we were all a part of, and this is also what bothers me, just have to have another quick rant. Just as the LDS church wants to have no connection to the whole fundamentalist movement, what is bananas to me is the FLDS officially, your church, like in Colorado City, and my side also want nothing to do with each other.
Right.
And they actually believe that they're very different.
Oh, yes.
And that's why we haven't met till today.
Yeah. It was at that, well, I was taught to believe that your group, this Centennial Park group, or otherwise known as the Work.
As otherwise known as the Work, yeah.
That you were all apostates.
Okay.
Which, in the FLDS church, apostate is
the
worst of the worst. So
it's worse than talking to a regular Gentile.
Right.
And why is that?
Because we were taught that Gentiles is what we'd call them, someone that had never heard of or been a part of the church. But once you have been given all of these blessings and you have accepted the truth in the church in your life, if you give that up or you deny it, then you become a son of perdition, or you become someone that will go into outer darkness, the worst of the worst.
Worse than rape or murder. There is a special place in hell because God in Mormonism and fundamentalist Mormonism doesn't just judge you. By the way, I just have to say again, it's just so funny how easy we're able to talk about this, even though which also proves my point that we're so similar, but we were raised to think how different we were from you. Right. And then sometimes literally still living, like so many people from the work still live in Colorado City.
Oh, yeah.
And we never associated with each other. We were afraid of each other. Yeah. We threw rocks at each other.
Yeah, quite literally. And by the way, this was only in 1985 when this split happened.
Not that
long ago. So that's why there's so much history shared. But yes, we would see people from your side. I always call your group Over the Hill, Centennial Park. It's just up over the hill.
You called them Over the Hill. We called you guys Over the Hill.
Over the hill. So,
that's funny.
Yeah. So it was just right over the hill. But you guys were always coming in to the parks in Colorado City and Hilldale. And we were taught that if we saw you there, to just ignore you and go the other way. We weren't supposed to associate with you in any way. And it was obvious to tell that you weren't a part of the FLDS church because you dressed modestly, but not as modest. And the women would always wear skirts with a blouse, whereas in the FLDS it was a prairie dress.
Yeah,
prairie dress.
Yeah. That's so wild. I think this is the most fascinating part of this entire thing, is how similar we were, but we were literally afraid for our own salvation, and that fear of one conversation with an apostate, because by the way, same thing, we thought you guys apostatized.
Okay, interesting. I was going to ask.
100%. Yeah. So the line of priesthood needs to continue, and we are the true ones that have kept it forever. Like, we were literally taught that we're the original church all the way to Jesus. So what's crazy is when you're in the work, you don't know that the work split off. It's not positioned or portrayed that way. It's portrayed as the Mormon church fell away. The bulk of the people left the true way of life. They abandoned God. And then so did y'all.
And because we stayed where we were, therefore you looked at it as they also went astray, and we had to move away once again to continue the correct. So
same narrative.
This is interesting because you say that you were taught that we were apostates.
Totally.
But it seemed that you guys would come into Colorado City and Hilldale, and you didn't seem to have much of a problem with showing up to a park that was full of FLDS people, or that you didn't seem to be afraid of, or that you were taught not to associate with us.
We were definitely taught, not as extreme.
Okay.
But we were definitely taught not to associate. The way it was taught about to us was, you said, like, almost like avoid. The literal conversation was, if you see someone from the other side of the split, don't cross the street to talk to them. But if they talk to you, be friendly.
Okay.
Because maybe you could save them. Like,
and
this is this is a big part of Mormon culture. It's why I believe that so many Mormons have the sort of reputation, the LDS church, about being nice, because they are, but they're also, you're like, can you kind of, they're sort of conditioned that they're going to be missionaries, and maybe they're going to convert people to the truth and stuff like that. But that's the way we were raised to talk about you guys.
And in your defense, because I came a little bit after the split, and I want to talk a little bit more about how the split went down.
Okay.
But before that, in your defense, you guys kind of continued dressing similar to the way that things were at that time. It was the FLDS church that got more extreme with modesty.
Yeah.
And more extreme with certain roles. So for us, looking at you guys as, oh, they're being immodest, you were kind of just keeping what was already there.
Yes.
We got more extreme.
Yes, and in fact, the way that you guys became more extreme, we used as sort of like political ammo or evidence as to proof that we were the one true church and that you guys were falling away. Because again, what we were taught was that the congregation is what got scapegoated. That the church, and it was a sort of like connected to some Bible story where they were slaves or whatever wanted a king.
I think that's in the Book of Mormon.
Probably. There were these people that wanted a king, and God's like, you don't need a king. And so what we were taught was the congregation wanted a prophet, wanted the leader, where God, to create order, has a council, a checks and balances, which kind of makes sense to me. Like, you don't have one dude that has all this, wielding all this power. So I'm like, yeah, that would make sense that God would have a council.
That's interesting. See, this is the first time I've heard someone say that, but that does make sense because there is a story in the Book of Mormon that talks about the people wanted a king. They wanted someone to tell them how to live their lives, and it ended awful for them. It was a very poor decision, so it was looked at as a negative thing. So I can see how you would use that story.
And then just us, you and I, zooming out and pausing and looking at this, what I find fascinating is that it makes sense on my side. It also made sense on your side.
Oh, yeah.
As then, like, people make their own narrative to what makes sense to them, what makes sense that has been done. Sometimes even revising history. Like, where my brain goes to now is looking even at culture and different bubbles and different religious factions all over the world, maybe in the Middle East, maybe in America, where they're having a story to say, maybe like this is why we believe what we believe, and they use all of their history to validate it. But they're not using their history to understand. They're using the history to validate, which we did.
Yeah.
We used the history to say, look, again, Book of Mormon story happened then, happened again now in our day.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Isn't it?
So going back to the split, I'm so curious on this as well, because I was told that Leroy Johnson had all the keys. He was the president, if you will, or in our case, we were told he was the prophet.
Yep.
He had all the keys.
Yep.
So technically, yes, there was the council, but you weren't supposed to do something behind the back of the prophet or the president.
Right.
And we were told that Leroy Johnson, as he started getting older and sick, he wasn't always able to be around. And oftentimes he'd be bedridden. During this time, Mr. Timpson and Mr. Hammond.
That's what you guys called them?
No, I don't. We call them by their first names. I'm just
interesting.
Just shortening.
Go ahead.
We call them Alma Timpson and Marion Hammond.
Okay.
So anyway, they were going and doing things
100%.
that they wanted to do and taking advantage of the fact that he was sick.
100%.
So of course that was.
By the way, we sure the shit wasn't ever told that.
Oh, you weren't told that?
That they, like, I've learned this.
Okay.
But it was not framed that way.
Of course not.
The way it was framed on our side, so that's so wild that you frame it that way, which is probably literally true, where they were taking advantage of the fact that the leader was sick, and so they were going and doing marriages.
Yep, they were doing things behind his back and telling the congregation and teaching sermons that went against some of the things that Leroy Johnson had set in place, which, in my mind, it makes perfect sense. Well, wow, they're going against the man that has all of the keys and all of the authority. That's a big no-no. And eventually, Leroy Johnson found out about it. And the other people, a part of the council, one of them being Rulon Jeffs, of course, went and said, hey, this is what's going on. And so Leroy Johnson got out of his bed, even though he was half dead, and comes marching into a meeting and says, you guys are out. I think he gave him a couple chances.
Totally.
At least the story I heard, that he gave him a couple chances. They kept doing it. And eventually he said, you guys are no longer welcome if you don't change your ways.
Yes. And there are stories of, like, in council meetings where he was trying to say, no, I'm the one that has the keys. And it's actually really funny that you frame it this way, because I think this is actually quite insightful. I actually do not think that it was doctrinal at the beginning. I think what it really was maybe even genuinely trying to create some sort of order, that there were these two guys, Alma Timpson and J.M. Hammond, were going on and taking younger wives and marrying people without the consent or the blessing even of the prophet.
Which I can see that being a concern.
100%.
But I also understand that you would never hear that side of the story.
Can I tell you our side?
Yes.
Because what we were taught was people lied to Leroy Johnson.
Oh, the people that went and told on your leaders.
So the people, and again, it was always brought to some sort of biblical or Mormon stories of how people can only handle so much truth. You can't handle the full truth. And they wanted to, and God will give you enough chances. It'll give you the full truth, but eventually he might even tell you a lie to make you fall away and like punish you.
Was it a test?
Yes. And in fact, that's what happened with y'all, is that they didn't want to have the full truth. And so people, Barlows and other people would lie to Leroy Johnson. By the way, I'm also part Barlow. But Leroy Johnson was lied to by Barlows and other men.
Them Barlows.
Yeah, them Barlows. About what Alma Timpson and J.M. Hammond were doing. And so that, again, was a convenient scapegoated way that they'd never had to not just confront, but also didn't have to criticize Leroy Johnson. And so the way they view it is, here's this line. This is what's said over the pulpit all the time. What in my upbringing is, Leroy Johnson, when he kicked them off the stand, and he said, I'm kicking you off so that the work can continue on.
Okay. Yep.
And that line, whether that, I don't even know if he actually said those words, because again, I've listened to the sermon and I don't think those were his exact words. But if you're FLDS, I can see that just basically being like, you're kind of creating issues, and so that we can continue on, leave. So the work can continue on. The way our church and my church leaders that I grew up with, which are basically the kids of Alma Timpson and J.M. Hammond, those are the ones that are in charge now. They said it's a continuing of what has been in Mormon history since the very beginning. We've had to be kicked out of, New York to Missouri and Missouri to Utah, and Utah, the church itself, the LDS church, starts persecuting us, and we have to move to the Short Creek area, and it's still continuing where a great sifting is happening, where God, the most faithful.
A great sifting. That was always talked about in my upbringing too.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we had to go off and create our own church again because everybody else couldn't quite take it, couldn't quite take the full gospel or whatever. And so that's why the kickoff happened, is so that the work could continue on. And of course, priesthood is the big conversation in this. And in that kickoff, something we didn't talk about, but we were taught that when the men got kicked out of the LDS church, they sort of cut off their priesthood, so to speak. And it's like cut themselves off by the roots because they kicked off their apostles or whatever that continue to live polygamy.
Right.
And there was something in there where we were taught that they sort of, when Leroy Johnson did that, he sort of passed the baton or inadvertently cut off the power of the priesthood, and it was now with Alma Timpson and J.M. Hammond.
It's interesting because with both of those men, both Alma Timpson and Marion Hammond, right?
Yeah, Jonathan Marion Hammond, and he would go by J.M. Hammond or Marion Hammond.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we weren't even, or at least the stories from where I heard how it went down went in a direction of, we weren't even surprised that these two men tried to stand up against Leroy Johnson, the leader, the prophet, because of the way that they would present themselves and how they would preach to the congregation.
Have you heard their sermons?
I have not, but I've heard that they would scream, they would pound their fist on the pulpit, they were yelling at people. And so my father would say things like, I'm not surprised they tried to go against the church, the one true church, because they were crazy people, basically, right? So,
can I connect to your Wi-Fi? I'm going to see if I can find this.
Yeah.
What's your Wi-Fi?
Let's see here. That's
it's been a minute since I've checked this out, but I'm going to see if I can find a sermon.
Yeah, no, that I would love that.
Honor, my dear, was last and always in our lives.
So is this Alma?
This is Alma Timpson.
Okay.
And this is the story of Mormonism. This is what we are here for. This is the reason many of us left the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, to come where we could lay hold upon this principle of eternal lives. And it's inseparably connected with plural marriage. And those who choose not plural marriage, and this wonderful principle that Joseph Smith Jr. introduced, can't have it. Some are just as naturally attracted to it as they are to the Adam-God doctrine. And usually these two go together. And those who fight against either one of these deny the other. Have you noticed that that's where the apostles of the Mormon Church, which are not the apostles of Jesus Christ, are telling us today that we are cultists, unbelievers, and apostates because we believe these two principles.
You can already sense that he gets excitable,
Yeah.
right? Because you're hearing a little bit of...
Yeah, I can see how he could get riled up, yeah. But that's what I would always hear.
You want to know what's bananas? This has completely continued.
Oh, through their sons.
100%.
Wow.
Dude, we made fun of y'all because you were so soft.
See, okay, but that was intentional.
Why?
The Jeffs would do that intentionally to make it seem like they were so godly, and that, you know, because they would talk about the importance of being quiet and always listening to the Spirit and following the what did they say? The inspiration and another word they would use, but basically always be quiet. We weren't allowed to laugh loudly. We weren't allowed to talk loudly in the house.
Because you don't want to scare off the Spirit of God or something,
Right.
right?
And we were just taught that was godliness, to be peaceful and not talk loudly. So it was intentional, is my point, that they would act that way and talk that way. And it was annoying. I mean, I listen to them now, and I mean, if I have a chance to talk to someone from the FLDS church, it's very much of a, well, I hope you're doing okay.
It's so...
You know, just very soft and just almost eerie sounding, because that's the way it was with Warren Jeffs as well.
Yeah, we're going to get into some of that. Okay, I got to show you this. So this is, I'm not even supposed to have this because this is something that was sent to me after leaving.
Yeah.
What I'm going to show you is a video of, and I'll probably do the audio and not the video, just for the people listening, because the video is kind of janky. This is current prophet of the work.
Okay.
John Timpson.
So he's the
he's
president.
The son.
The president
he's the
of the
president
church.
of priesthood. And this was so typical. So Alma Timpson talked like Alma Timpson, his father, talked like this. J.M. Hammond did, and so it was all. It's now, in my upbringing, it was almost a point of pride that they're just like fired up with the Spirit of God.
Okay.
And
So they go that route.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Check this out.
For you to even sit in the presence of an anti-priesthood speaker is risking your very soul. If you've got friends like that, you ought to get rid of them so damn fast. It makes their heads spin.
Isn't this wild?
And if any of you here are anti-priesthood, you heard it today. Get out.
In other words, if you dare have any critique of us, there's nothing we can do wrong. Get out of the building. And he goes on to say, this is a subtle little devil to even dare to question us.
It's the rules of being here. This is a subtle little devil.
Doesn't that just seem so bright and happy
my gosh, yeah.
and encouraging?
No.
This is bananas to me. This was normal. My entire upbringing. This is normal. Like, if anybody from the church watches this episode, they're going to be triggered because you can't talk about these guys being imperfect. My entire like going to church, always yelling, always getting after the people. Like, you might be good, but you're not good enough. And like,
Oh, okay.
like it's just
interesting.
What's your take seeing that?
I mean, it doesn't mean much to me because I never knew this guy, right? And I've seen other churches and other Christian groups that, you know, people get super fired up as well. But normally it's not cursing people and telling people that they're not good enough. You know, it's more uplifting, yelling, right? But I heard that they would get very fired up and very angry at the congregation, which doesn't make sense to me if you're trying to get people to follow you, you know. But
the thing
seems to work for them.
But the thing that I just find just so interesting is the I guess the fear in it. Like, again, for you to even sit in the presence of an anti-priestess speaker, which connects again to what both you and I were taught, that what that means in shorthand is to not have conversation with somebody that might think differently or might say have some critique on the leadership, that you're risking your very soul
just to communicate or sit next to.
Yeah, just to even be in the presence. So in a way, this is what's bananas. If you and I were still in the fundamentalist church, both of you and I would be in fear right now.
Oh, yeah.
By having even a conversation.
Oh, this would have never happened.
Never.
No. Yeah.
This would have been you and I fearing for our own soul to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And I think this is where I want to start, like, now talking about. I have no idea about what happened with you. I know with Warren and everything, it started to get very sort of more on the nose or obvious that maybe he was a little bit less than prophetic.
Not while I was out there.
Okay, talk to me.
He was very good at hiding any of his imperfections. Now, obviously, his family and close people to him, they could see things that we never saw. But as far as I was concerned, and the majority of the congregation, Warren Jeffs was perfect. And the majority of the FLDS people, those that still believe and follow Warren Jeffs, still believe that he is perfect.
One phrase I forgot to mention when you were talking about that, if the prophet does it, he's perfect. Like, he can't go wrong. We had a phrase, if it's priesthood, it's yes. Priesthood can do no wrong. If priesthood is doing something, like whether it's the group of the men or whoever's acting with that priesthood name, which again, like, you as a human, you must see that, like, obvious now foreshadowing of how it creates this control and cover for abominable behavior, right?
Yeah, definitely. And it's wild that when you're conditioned, and especially you and I, when you're raised in a certain church and belief, and your parents are telling you it's the truth, I mean, I would never have dared question Warren Jeffs.
Totally. What would that have even felt like to even... What would that feel like to even have a thought?
I honestly would have been afraid that God would smite me in some way. Honestly, and I'm not joking. It's actually, I would have been afraid. Dude, did you guys ever do fast? Did you have to fast?
We talked about it.
Okay,
but we didn't really do it. And correct me if I'm wrong. This is like something that you would do pretty regularly.
Yes.
As like a religious practice to be a little bit better.
Yeah, so we would stop eating food for a certain amount of time in order to be able to focus all of our time and attention on one specific thing, whether it was to become more godlike, whether it was because the church needed something, and so we were all fasting and praying together to become more spiritual and to really call upon the attention of God to help us in certain ways. So, but I bring this up because you asked me how I would feel about having a thought against Warren Jeffs. And there was one of these specific times where Warren Jeffs said, okay, we need to fast for 4 days.
Whoa.
4 days. And I'm a teenager. I'm always hungry.
Yeah.
So 4 days, we can drink water, but no food. And I remember I was starving, just starving, and I was outside in our backyard, and we had apple trees. And I'm like, these apples are ripe, and I'm starving, and obviously it crossed my mind the Garden of Eden and partaking of the forbidden fruit. Yes, and so, but I took it, and I did partake. And
No.
I know I said that, and that almost sounded bad. But I took the apple, I ate the apple, and I legitimately...
You legitimately partook of the forbidden fruit. But
yes,
continue.
Yes. I looked up, and I was waiting for God to punish me somehow. I was like, I couldn't not eat it. I was that hungry. And I was just, I wasn't in the right mindset. I mean, this was 3 days without food at this point. Like, I was just all over the place. And, but I expected to be punished.
Totally. We had so many things. I've talked about this a little bit, but I want to hit the point home. When I was questioning what I was born into, I didn't feel safe in my own head.
Yeah.
Because if I'm wrong, there's a special place for us.
Very special.
Son of perdition.
Yeah. And it's worse than just being poofed into nothing. It's worse than just, well, that would be pretty bad too. But it's, you did this, you left the church, you left the truth, you denied the priesthood or the Holy Ghost, is how they would put it. So you will now be suffering in the dungeons of hell for eternity. Not for 100 years. For eternity, you will be suffering because of this one thing that you did. Which is leave the church.
Leaving, and that was calling bluff on that entire idea that I could be damning myself. Like, it's sort of bananas. Like, I'm getting to this place now where I'm several years out where I almost don't even realize how big of a fucking deal it was to leave.
How long has it been for you?
7 years.
Oh, okay.
And the thing that I find interesting, almost like as a anthropological study of my own life and what I was born into, and as I left it, I believed this so hardcore. I promised myself when I was 15 that I wouldn't even kiss a girl until I married her, and I kept that promise to myself. And because arranged marriage is how you're going to get your covenant marriage. And
so it was a little different for you, speaking of marriages, right? You guys were allowed to date in a very controlled way.
Not how I was raised.
Oh, really?
No.
Because we've talked to other people from Centennial Park, and they did, or at least I was under the impression that you would go on dates before marrying.
Nope.
Oh,
not the way I was raised.
Interesting.
So my family, so one thing you have to know about the Waymans, and we were sort of black sheeped because of this. Even though the headquarters of the work was right there by Colorado City. Mm-hmm. Literally, the families that are living or going to the work and going to the church of the work lived next door to you, essentially, in Colorado City. Wayman's, my whole upbringing was in Salt Lake.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
And so our family was actually raised more FLDS-y. We were pretty culty, just within our own family. And so we did things that were a little bit more strict from what the regular work did. So for example, the regular work, you know how you guys ended up doing like no playing and no toys and stuff like that? So we had some strange little belief on that sometimes where it's like that's being frivolous to do anything like that. And we had this thing against dancing. The work danced. We didn't.
Okay, so you were a lot more strict because there are documentaries out there now about the work that there are community dances.
Totally.
Like they encourage people to go and meet their future wife, for example.
I would go climb the trees in Centennial Park just to peek into the dance because I didn't go to the dance.
So you did move to Centennial Park then?
Eventually.
Okay.
After I got married.
Oh, after you were already married.
Yeah, but I would also travel from Salt Lake to Centennial once or twice a month.
Okay.
Because we had church in Salt Lake at my grandfather's house, but it was only once a month. And in Centennial, it was every week.
Right.
And so to get more gospel in your life, travel down there. But we were fulfilling some prophecy that the priesthood again, priesthood was such a big deal, would never leave the Salt Lake Valley. There was something that some prophet said, and so we had to fulfill that by staying. That created a rift between Mormons, between Waymans and the rest of the church, because the church was called to Zion, was called to gather, and everybody gathered except Waymans.
Interesting. Okay. So this was after the split from FLDS to the work.
Yep.
Because the FLDS had a bunch of people in Colorado City and Hilldale, and then another large group where the Jeffs used to live in Salt Lake City area.
Yeah. So
they all moved down during the time of the Olympics. In 2002, all of the FLDS people were required to move down south.
Why?
Because we were told that basically with the Olympics coming, that the Salt Lake Valley was going to be swarmed with evil, whatever words they used. It'd become this bad place, and of course the great destructions were going to happen.
You're just making me flash back to things that we were taught that I haven't thought of in years, but it just makes you afraid to go outside. That there were evil spirits everywhere, and that you had to be in your dedicated property with dedicated boundaries.
Yep.
And there were stories of like maybe Leroy Johnson, but other prophets of the past, presidents of the priest of the past, that would drove up to Lagoon and looked out their window and saw it crawling with evil spirits.
There were all kinds of horror stories, and saying things like, if you could only see in a church meeting, if you could only see all of the evil angels sitting right outside of this church building, because the church building was dedicated, and by dedicated I mean they actually have a dedicatory prayer to cast out all evil spirits.
Yep.
And they would say, if you could only see all of the evil spirits just waiting to tempt you and to try to convince you to do wrong when you leave these meetings, you would never want to leave.
Yes.
So they would say things like that to keep us afraid and to try to follow the rules and all of that. So
it's so wild. And again, this is what I mean by the more I've been out of it, I don't realize how big of a deal it was to leave, because you look at all of these things that small and big to tie you in. The fear, you're going to damn your soul. Like, for me to question and be willing to sort of die on my own sword, so to speak. Because the one thing for me that never made sense is I was like, if there's a God, it didn't make sense that somebody could be being a lazy person sitting on their sofa and not questioning, but they get to have the fullness of the gospel and all these blessings.
Right.
And me, somebody that's questioning and wanting to actually learn and understand. It was just wild. One thing that I wanted to tie back to, again, I've hit on it a couple of times. I just have to keep on hitting on it because it's such a big thing that I, like, now in retrospect, I can't believe that we were taught to think how separate we were from you.
Oh, as far as the Centennial Park group and the FLDS?
Yeah.
Okay.
We were taught almost that there was like this Grand Canyon separation. Literally, this split happened along family lines, where if you believed in the Leroy Johnson way of doing it, you were over there. If you were believed with what J.M. Hammond and Alma Timpson did, you were on this side. And there was like this quick marriage surge thing that happened too, where young marriages happened from the FLDS to the work. Like, there were young marriages of like 15, 16, 17, so that we had like wives and stuff like that. But you want to know what? Like, and I believed it almost my entire life. I thought that we were so different until right before I left. And this is how it happened. Right before I left, I had friends in town. And again, I'm living down there now. Like, at this point, I'm living near Colorado City. I drive through it. I go to the parks.
Yeah.
And I remember having my two friends, and I'm driving around Colorado City and telling them about how strange y'all are. And
I can see where this is going.
How different all their beliefs are. And they're like, so what do these guys think and believe? And I was like, well, they believe in this and they believe in that. And I just say all these things about you. And I'll never forget this. My friends are then like, oh. So it sounds like they believe pretty much the same thing that you believe. And I remember it jolting me and thinking, oh no, we're way different.
Yep.
In fact, it's to the point that people from the work, if they see this and they see any reference to me saying that I come from the FLDS, because I do, or that I come from fundamentalist Mormonism, they're quick to jump on like, just so you know, no, like we're completely different. It's like my mom, who passed away, one of my moms who passed away a couple years ago, she is the niece of Warren Jeffs.
Oh, wow.
Warren Jeffs is her uncle. Like we're literally tied. We're literally kin.
Oh, yeah.
We literally believe the same thing, literally in the same geographical area. And yet there are groups of humans today in your family and in my family,
Yep.
where they, to this moment right now, think that they have no connection to each other whatsoever.
I mean, there's the idea that there was, before the split, right? There was this, that we were all one. But now they believe, yes, that, like to your point, that religiously, completely opposite sides of the world.
And what happens if you talk to the other side?
Right.
It's dangerous.
Yep.
The other side could literally damn your soul to hell. 1 minute with a 1 minute conversation, or you could like. There was a phrase that I heard, and I've talked to other FLDS people that I've heard that you guys had something similar to, like one conversation with an apostate could risk your testimony,
or your salvation,
and risking your testimony is then risking your salvation. Just on a human level, I find this so fascinating because I'm like, where else is this showing up in culture? Mm-hmm. Where we think we're so separate and so different.
Yep.
But same bloodlines, similar beliefs, but we look at each other and like, no, we're like so different, and we create these stories of separation.
Yeah, it's wild.
And I just find it fascinating because we are quite literally so connected in so many ways in DNA, and it took both of us leaving
And creating a YouTube channel to be able to finally connect.
It's just, I don't even, life is so weird, man. It's
wild. It is wild. And it's, to me, I mean, things have gotten a lot different now. As far as, I don't know about for your side, the work, as you call it. Maybe that's continuing on the same. The FLDS church
it's changing big time, right?
Is it changing a lot?
No, I'm saying
yes, the FLDS church is split across, and I wonder if a lot of the reason why the work or Centennial Park don't want anything to do with the FLDS now is because of what Warren Jeffs
big time
has plastered all over the internet.
Perfect. Yeah,
and the
100%.
news.
100%.
So, because before things weren't quite so strained. Does that sound?
No, it was. I definitely have memories as like a kid with it being very much still strained, even before Warren became like this known pedophile prisoner, like fugitive. It was very separate. But to me, the way I read it now, why any of this happens is almost like this deep-seated insecurity for your own identity and your own existence. And if you almost need to create the separation as reason for existing. Like we're so different from them. We're the one true church that's carrying on the true way of life, and any sort of concession to that is threatening to your own livelihood, identity, and way of life.
Yeah.
Yep. And in fact, I think in the last couple of minutes here, I would love to start to come in for a landing of like, yeah, how do you view this whole thing now? Because you've been out for a while.
16 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I left in 2008. So just before, well, things were already getting crazy. Warren Jeffs had been the prophet for 2 years. And so things were going that direction. He was already in prison. But things got a lot crazier after I left.
Yeah. Was there a moment or a part, or was it like your mom or somebody leaving? It's like, okay, maybe that sounds like a good idea. Like, what was the?
That's funny you say that, because my mom is probably the strongest in the FLDS faith of anyone I've ever met in my life, and she still to this day doesn't really. Well, I haven't seen her in almost 16 years.
What did you haven't seen your mom?
No. I mean, I saw her a few times after I left, but it's been years. I don't know the exact number. Because
the way you said that so casually is what is my point of why I even wanted to come do this episode. That blows my mind.
Yeah.
Your own mother. And why?
Because the church says that I'm an evil person. Because I left. I left. Therefore, immediately I become this apostate.
You're wearing short sleeves, you heathen.
Exactly. Short sleeves, yeah, and if I could talk to her today, she would just beg me to come back.
100%. She cares about you.
That's all she wants. And I know she still loves me, but because of the church teachings, we're not allowed to embrace and to be together, which is sad,
it's
for
so
sure.
sad.
And I say it casually because at this point...
I know. That's my point. I'm not saying it shouldn't have been casual.
Well,
my point...
It technically shouldn't be, but it was such a normal... Very sad, but at the time, I knew that if I chose to leave, this would happen.
Totally.
So
like that was the part that was so hard for me is, and again, the thing that I find, the work to this day is not obviously a cult yet. It's not obvious to the people in it or the people out of it. In the FLDS, you started to see things start to come out with what Warren did.
Yeah, but I left before I didn't believe.
Did you leave before he got arrested?
No, he was in prison.
Okay.
But I didn't believe anything I saw. We were taught never to believe what you see on the news. We weren't supposed to watch news at all.
Right.
But we were taught that people could fabricate information. They could make things look real that aren't real. So even when I left in 2008, I didn't believe he had done anything wrong.
Really?
Not a thing.
Were you just sort of going on like this, sort of needing to sin a little? Like, what made you leave?
So I wasn't intentionally trying to sin, but I got to a point where I was 18 years old. I wanted to be able to date and have a future family.
Shocker.
Yeah,
horrible.
Yeah, it seems pretty natural, right? I wasn't allowed to date anyone or even look at the opposite sex.
Right.
And so that was just not an option, number one. Number two, the rules were getting more and more strict. And the word fun was taken away. We weren't supposed to...
The word was taken?
Even the word fun. We were supposed to, if something was enjoyable, we could say, I enjoy this, but we could not say fun. We were supposed to just be focused on the work of God. It got very...
culty.
It was very hard to live that way at 18 years old and 17 and 16. So it just got to a point where I had a lot of moments of, I don't love this, and I wonder what it would be like on the outside. And then through work, I met some people on the outside. And to my surprise, they seemed happy. Dude. Which was shocking to me because I was taught to believe that everyone on the outside couldn't possibly be happy because they're not in the truth. They don't have the happiness and joy that we have, right?
You see what's going on right now? Goosebumps. Literally the same thing. The thing that fucked me up was great people. Good people that were happy and that had good things happening to them. It messed me up in the best way.
Exactly. Sorry, Cat came to visit.
Oh, good. Okay. So it was like, okay, there is something out here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what it was, is I met this wonderful family and other people as well, but this one family that specifically stood out to me was, I mean, just so loving, so willing to be there and be friendly, and they were curious. They wanted to know more about me and my brothers, and it was just very unusual, for me to have this connection with someone from the outside. And so immediately I started wondering, maybe what I have been taught isn't completely true.
What a scary thought, man.
Right.
Wow.
But when I left, I still assumed that one day I would probably have to go back in order to live with God again.
Okay.
Yeah. So it took maybe 3-4 months before I finally got to that position of, you know what? No, it's better on the outside.
Yeah, like for me, I didn't even know it was, I mean, I call it a cult now. A lot of people would call it a cult. Do you call it a cult? Your past or your upbringing, or is it too much of a loaded word?
So, in short, I don't typically refer to it as a cult, even though the characteristics and the things that are considered a cult are definitely what it is.
Okay.
But for me, especially on our YouTube channel, we try to use the word lightly, or use the word
for the people in it.
Yeah, refrain from using the word because there are so many people in it that I know do watch our videos.
I respect that.
And I don't want to come across as bashy, because
Right.
I understand what they're going through. I understand what they have been through.
Yep.
And I want to be that resource for them. If they ever do have questions or do leave, they can come and ask.
That's super valid. I have respect for that.
But I also understand people calling it a cult. I understand why they would and where that's coming from.
Yeah, I suppose the connected to my point is I didn't even think when I left, I didn't fully know that it was something like this that we've just discussed over the last hour or so, where it's been like made and controlled. I was just like, I just don't know if it's fully true.
Right.
And I need to leave my parents' house for the first time is what it felt like as like a young man. It felt like I needed to continue to live on. Does it mean I want to throw all this away, all the blessings and all the good that came from it? Of course not. But as a man, in my evolution as a human, I'm like, I hope there's another life after this. We were taught that there was, but the one thing I knew for sure is I've got this one, and I want to go live it. And another big thing for me was my entire life had been not just controlled, it had been directed from the outside in. Like, read these books, behave this way. It wasn't anything that I had genuinely internally discovered with direct lived experience. And I wanted to trust that for the first time.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, I want to live my life based on my own internal guiding system instead of like our entire lives where somebody else is saying this is what you should do and you're sort of conforming yourself to the one true way.
Sounds very similar to my experience, just, wanting to experience it and make a decision on my own.
Yeah.
And but man, that feeling when I first made the decision and I was driving away. First of all, I was afraid that I would be smitten from some lightning bolt or something. But aside from that, the feeling of freedom was amazing.
Really?
It was amazing. I finally felt that I could make a decision on my own and that no one would be waiting around the corner ready to, whether it was punish or make me feel guilty, or it was me making a decision on my own between me and God in my mind at that time.
Bro, I'm so happy for you for that. How long did that take to get to that freedom? This immediately?
No, well, it was an odd feeling at first, but to feel actually free and to feel that, this is good for me, it took a few months.
Want to know what's wild? Barely getting to that.
Oh, really?
Years later.
Wow.
Just in the last year. It's so wild. No, it's why I went full time on this show. In fact, I'm hanging out with my sisters here in Vegas for a birthday party. Some sisters that have left, and little sisters, and we were just at this place called Area 15.
Oh yeah.
And we're having a good time in there. And a conversation we had earlier today was, don't you sort of feel like sometimes, like in the back of your mind, that you're getting away with something? And we're like, totally. Just because we're having a good time.
Yep.
We're going in as adults. Like, is anybody going to come stop us and say, you need to get back to work and you need to get back to the, I am just getting to this place where I truly feel free, where I get to live my life my way doing what I think is best for me, my family, and live where I want to live in New York, and not feel like I'm going to get pulled back to something. Like, it's taken a long time, and I still think there's probably, I mean, I was in it for 30 years.
Yeah, that's a lot longer than I was in it for.
Yeah, 30 years of conditioning. And I mean, I was doing some research on the odds with ChatGPT. What are the odds of somebody in this situation that not just joined a cult, but was born in a cult, lived in it after 30 years of conditioning, like one in how many? And it spit out 1 in a million to leave.
Wow.
Because I had a arranged marriage. I had 2 kids.
Oh, wow.
I had a family ecosystem. Like my dad, my grandfather were all a part of it, all polygamist, 44 siblings, like everybody's in it. Like my entire core social network was that.
Wow.
And so in fact, that was a question I wanted to end on with you, because I know for many people, so I have a lot of people that watch that maybe they go through something hard that maybe isn't religious, but maybe it's a relationship or a job. Like stepping into authenticity is lonely in a way. How did you... I mean, some of your relationships, like your mom, for example, must have ended immediately.
In a way, the relationship that I had with her and my siblings that were still in the church ended immediately, as far as the type of relationship we had. But there were still moments where I did drive back out to my home. In fact, I missed my family so much that there were some nights I drove out near my home at the park and just slept in my car.
Totally.
Just because I felt like I was at somewhere near them at least, right? And was obviously missing them a lot. So that was rough for sure. But I did see them on occasion for the next year or so, but not in the same way. It was a very quick hello, goodbye, you know. But it was about 2 years after I left that it just was cut off.
That's so wild. How did you start to form, this might sound strange to say, but new family or new community?
See, I was lucky. And I've been through a lot since I left, but as far as faith journeys and deconstructing and all of these things that in other ways. But so I was lucky because I had a soft landing with another family.
Amazing.
That took me in.
That's awesome.
Now, when I first, in fact, the first night I left, I slept on their couch.
Great.
Yeah. So wonderful family. This is the same family that I talked about that seemed very happy on the outside.
Okay.
And I was wondering, how is this possible? So they took me in and helped me a lot, and in finding my footing and helping me move forward from there. I also left with one of my brothers. So leaving together, that was a huge support.
Totally.
To have each other and not be completely alone. So it took some time. It was difficult, but I did have almost this immediate family and friend group on the outside. And then I did end up joining the mainstream LDS church,
cool.
Which, was kind of wild considering the way I was raised, that I did end up joining that, the mainstream LDS church. And once again, that was a whole other community that I immediately had.
Totally. It's
which was a very soft landing for me because very similar teachings and doctrine in both churches. And so anyway, I got lucky in that way for sure, and it helped me in so many ways. I was able to get an education. I served a 2-year mission in Chile, which learning a new language was so difficult because I was only homeschooled up to maybe 8th grade, if even that. And so doing some of these really difficult things like learning a new language and living in a different country really gave me some self-confidence to, move forward and have this, I guess, eagerness to progress more in life and to get an education and things like that.
I think that's probably a good note to start wrapping with. Is that's the thing that sort of makes these conversations sort of complicated, is there's actually so much good in it. Like the Mormon structure has helped you.
Yeah.
It was a soft landing. It was community.
Yeah.
You got to learn a new language and go get life experience going on a mission, you know?
Yeah. A lot of good things. Now, at this point, I have stepped away from the mainstream LDS church as well.
Okay.
So I do not consider myself Mormon at this point.
Okay.
That's why I say I've been through a lot of journeys and a lot of things since then. My wife and I have done this journey together, which has been, once again, I feel very lucky to have someone with me to go through these things together, which has been very difficult. Once again, don't get me wrong, to deconstruct once again from something that I believe so fully in. But
how do you identify now, if at all, or anything particular? Christian.
So I will say I don't know.
That's probably one of the most honest. I wish more adults could say those 3 words.
There's a lot of things that I do know, but I can't claim to know exactly what comes after this life. I've known, quotation marks here, I've known so many things that have been proven to be wrong.
So true.
Right? And so in my mind, to claim that I know something as important as what comes after this life is something that I don't think I can say for certainty. But but like you said, and I agree, I did get a lot of good things from my upbringing. Mm-hmm. It wasn't all bad.
That's so true.
And I got a lot of great things and learned a lot of amazing values in the mainstream LDS church as well. It wasn't all bad.
100%.
It came down to me and my wife deciding what was best for our family and our kids, and that is what is moving us forward now.
I just tweeted this today, and it just reminds me of what you're saying, where being able to say I don't know, and you've been so sure about something before, and I've also been wrong. You've had to deconstruct.
Right.
I wrote, many of you did not escape a cult, and it shows. Just kidding. I wouldn't wish that on anyone having to do that. I was like, but what I sort of wish everyone got to experience the process of being completely certain about something, only to painfully discover you were completely wrong, regardless of how certain you were. Certainty doesn't add weight to the argument. It only adds thickness to the bubble walls you may be in. And that's sort of what this thing happens. Like for us, it's sort of paradoxical for us to grow and leave. We've had to become less certain. Yeah. And more curious and say, I don't know.
Open-minded.
Yeah.
I was so closed-minded in both religions, right? You find this one thing that you hold on to, and no matter what anyone else says around you, you're nope, you're wrong, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right. And to have the position that I'm in right now, where I can just listen to someone, doesn't matter where they come from or what they believe, and say, interesting, that is so, and just be so interested in their story and their belief instead of just being closed off.
Yeah.
I've found to be very uplifting and a lot more healthy way to live.
Me too. And we're going to wrap it there. I think there's going to be more times we talk.
Yeah,
different topics.
We could talk forever.
It'd be so fun to just rehash some of the details more. I can't believe how much we were able to just go through the history and share. I don't know. There's also something life is wild. I don't know how humans got here. We're all on a ball hurling through space, and however we were born, we somehow ended up in Vegas meeting and having shared history.
Yeah, life's a crazy thing. Thanks once again for having me on. This has been very eye-opening and very fun to finally connect with you.
You're so welcome.
You notice how I use the word fun? I can use the word now.
Oh, yeah. You heathen. Guys, I want to know, what was your favorite part of this conversation? Maybe there's a question that you'd want Sam to answer from being FLDS, or me from the work, and just growing up in this way at all. What's your favorite part? What's a question you have? Any comment you put in the comments, I will be reading every single one. So thank you for being here, Sam, bro.
Hey, thank you.
Let this not be the last time. Stay curious. Okay, I'm back home in my studio in New York City. That was a fun trip out to Las Vegas and back. So many cool things from this conversation. I think the main takeaway that I want to highlight from this whole conversation is not putting certainty on a pedestal. I think it was so sad when I heard of Sam not talking to his mom coming on 2 decades over belief. And Sam and I did not know each other because of belief, even though the Centennial Park Group and Colorado City literally are right by each other. And where else do we have this in society where people can be living right by each other? Israel, Palestine, and it can just be our neighbors. It can be anyone, where the thing getting in our way is just our uncertainty. And just being able to humble ourselves enough to be like, you know what? I don't know fully. I don't know. And just being open to what somebody else has to say. I think that's my biggest takeaway on this episode. What's your biggest takeaway? I want to do this more when I'm doing takeaways. By the way, this is my full-time job, even though it's not making any money yet. And so if you want to help me not, have to get kicked out of this apartment and live on the streets or something, then just subscribe. Just be like, yo, let the algorithm know. We need more content. We need more Calvin stuff. I want to be doing more of these types of conversations, catching up with people and their life post-cult, And for many people, I think what I've noticed with people that watch is sometimes it's not about a cult. Sometimes it's just leaving the script that we've all been handed. We've all been handed some script. And I think we all can realize that we're holding the pen to our life and that we can design it the way that we want, which is what I'm trying to do here in New York City and certainly what Sam is pulling off in Las Vegas. So, yeah, would love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you on the next episode. Peace.